In 1968, the U.S. military launched a psychological war in ghosts to haunt the dense Vietnamese jungles. One soldier encountered a specter nobody planned for, an ancient Roman legionnaire standing among the tropical ferns. This glitch in time felt like a character from another era walking into a modern war zone. It serves as a haunting memento mori, reminding us that death and history are never truly buried. Vietnamese culture deeply honors ancestors, believing that restless spirits wander if they are not properly buried. Military strategists saw this sacred belief not as a tradition, but as a weapon to be exploited. They christened this eerie psychological campaign Operation Wandering Soul to target the fears of their enemy. Ghostly voices were recorded and broadcast from helicopters, echoing through the canopy like screams from the afterlife. The goal was to convince North Vietnamese soldiers that their fallen comrades were suffering in eternal limbo. These tapes transformed the already claustrophobic jungle into a landscape of manufactured psychological hauntings and dread. While the Americans played at being ghosts, the jungle itself seemed to be hiding much older secrets. What happens when the ghosts you are trying to exploit suddenly become terrifyingly real? Deep within this haunted terrain, Craig Jorgensen of the First Cavalry Division saw something truly impossible. Through the thick mist, he spotted a warrior wearing the iron armor of a distant Roman legion. The figure stood motionless, a silent sentinel from a world that ended 2,000 years ago. No psychological tape could explain the presence of a Mediterranean soldier in the heart of Southeast Asia. For Jorgensen, the lines between reality and nightmare began to blur beneath the heavy jungle canopy. Could the humid jungle itself act as a bridge across 2,000 years of human conflict? We are left wondering if some spirits are too powerful for any military operation to control. Perhaps the whispers in the trees were not just tapes, but echoes of ancient Latin voices lost. Like the legendary John Calder, Jorgensen found himself facing a frontier of the truly unknown. To understand how a man from the Pacific Northwest faced this ancient specter, we must look closer. The journey of the man behind the rifle reveals the thin veil between our world and the next. To understand the terror, we must first look at the psychological games played within the dense jungle. The U.S. military initiated Operation Wandering Soul to exploit the deepest spiritual fears of the Vietnamese people. This campaign relied on the local belief that those who die violently become restless, wandering spirits. Soldiers used massive speakers to blast the eerie sounds of Ghost Tape Number 10 across the canopy. The recording featured distorted voices of dead comrades calling out to the living from the darkness. For those hiding in the brush, these sounds were a terrifying reminder of their own mortality. This constant awareness of death served as a grim memento mori for everyone trapped in the conflict. Within the First Cavalry Division, men like Craig Jorgensen began to feel the weight of these hauntings. Jorgensen and others like John Coulter navigated a landscape where the line between reality and myth blurred. While the military manufactured ghosts, something far older and more inexplicable seemed to be waking up. Amidst the engineered screams, reports of ancient figures and strange languages began to surface from the fog. The familiar jungle sounds were replaced by a low, rhythmic chanting that sounded suspiciously like ancient Latin. These anomalies challenged the sanity of soldiers who were already pushed to their outbreaking point. Even seasoned veterans of the First Cavalry Division struggled to explain the shadows they saw moving. It was as if Operation Wandering Soul had accidentally summoned a ghost from a much older war. A Roman legion appearing in a Southeast Asian jungle felt like a fever dream born of exhaustion. Yet the sightings persisted, grounding themselves in the minds of men who knew every inch of terrain. This intersection of modern warfare and ancient history created a mystery that defies conventional military explanation. Each encounter served as a chilling reminder that the jungle remembers every soul that ever passed through. As the tapes played, the reality of the Roman presence became impossible for Jorgensen to ignore. The psychological pressure of the operation opened doors to perceptions that many wished would remain tightly shut. Behind every tree, the past and present collided, leaving a trail of questions that still haunt history. Before he was a witness to the impossible, Thomas was just a student in Washington State. In 1967, his days were filled with textbooks and the quiet rains of the Pacific Northwest. However, the shadow of a distant war soon reached across the ocean to find him. The draft board changed everything, leading Thomas to his induction center in the heart of Seattle. How quickly can a student's quiet life be replaced by the heavy weight of an M16? He soon found himself at Fort Lewis, trading his civilian clothes for the rigors of training. This training was a pressure cooker designed to forge raw students into tempered blades of steel. For 16 grueling weeks, Thomas endured basic and advanced infantry training on those wooded grounds. Every drill pushed him further, stripping away his old life to make room for a soldier. He learned the art of war while the looming jungle waited patiently for his arrival. Even then, a sense of memento mori began to settle deeply within his young, changing mind. After 4 months, the transformation was complete, and the order for deployment finally came down. Thomas boarded a massive transport plane at McChord Air Force Base, leaving his home behind. The long journey began with a cold, brief stop in the frozen landscapes of Alaska. From the north, he crossed the Pacific to Japan, inching closer to the heat of conflict. With every mile, the familiar world faded, replaced by the uncertainty of a strange, new land. Finally, the wheels touched down in Vietnam, a world away from the misty forests of Washington. He arrived just as the psychological terrors of Operation Wandering Soul began to take root. Thomas was assigned to the legendary First Cavalry Division, where the true haunting would begin. He wondered if the stories told by veterans like Craig Jorgensen were more than just myths. Soon, he would encounter mysteries like Latin phrases, whispered by ghosts in the heavy night air. His path was now set, mirroring the legendary explorations of men like the brave John Colder. 16 weeks of training prepared him for war, but nothing could prepare him for the unknown. Thomas was joining the 1st Cavalry Division, a unit destined to face unimaginable loss and harrowing hardship. The division, known simply as the Cav, arrived in the steaming jungles of Vietnam in the fall of 1965. They were the tip of the spear, a modern cavalry designed to strike deep into hostile enemy territory. In that pivotal autumn of 1965, the air was thick with the promise of imminent, bloody conflict. It was not long before they faced their first major engagements against disciplined North Vietnamese forces. The true test of their resolve came during the brutal and chaotic Battle of Ninh. This violent clash unfolded just south of the border that divided the warring North and South Vietnam. The jungle canopy swallowed the sound of gunfire, leaving only the scent of smoke and damp earth. By the time the smoke cleared at Ninh, 13 American soldiers had made the ultimate sacrifice. Another 44 men were left wounded, their lives forever changed by the carnage of that single day. Across the wire, the cost was even higher, with an estimated 226 enemy soldiers killed. These early skirmishes were merely a dark prelude to the staggering attrition that would soon define their war. Over the course of the conflict, the 1st Cavalry Division would lose more than 5,000 men. This massive loss of life served as a constant memento mori for those who remained in the field. Can a single unit carry such heavy loss and still find the strength to continue the fight? The physical toll was devastating, with nearly 27,000 soldiers suffering wounds during their long service. For many, the weight of these numbers felt like a spectral presence haunting every tactical decision made. While Operation Wandering Soul played on the enemy's fears, the Americans faced their own internal, mounting dread. Men like Craig Jorgensen watched as the division storied. History was written in the blood of comrades. Some whispered that the sheer volume of death invited ancient shadows to linger within the dense tree line. Perhaps it was this environment that later allowed legends of a lost Roman legion to take root. Before John Colter or the others witnessed the impossible, they first had to survive the daily attrition. Every fallen soldier was a reminder of mortality, a silent Latin phrase echoing through the humid jungle air. But by the spring of 1968, the massive battles gave way to a deceptive, unsettling kind of quiet. Far from the headlines, Thomas found himself stationed at a lonely observation post near the town of Phan Thiet. It was the spring of 1968, and the air near the South China Sea felt heavy with anticipation. Far from the chaos of Saigon, Thomas and his company moved through the rugged mountains of Phan Thiet. This coastal region offered no respite from the humidity or the constant feeling of being watched by shadows. As members of the First Cavalry Division, they were the tip of the spear in this unforgiving wilderness. For 10 days, the infantry company navigated treacherous valleys, searching for signs of an invisible enemy. The dense foliage whispered secrets of the past, echoing the psychological dread of Operation Wandering Soul. Deep within the mountain range, the soldiers stumbled upon a hidden foot trail following a silent stream. This discovery was more than a tactical find. It was a doorway into the unknown. Who was using this path, and what secrets were they carrying through the dark undergrowth? The mission shifted quickly as the platoon decided to set up a concealed observation post nearby. Watching a silent trail in the dark is like waiting for a ghost to show its face. They settled into the damp earth, their eyes scanning the darkness for any movement along the water. Every snap of a twig felt like a memento mori, a reminder of the thin line between life and death. Thomas found himself assigned to the most unnerving shift of all, the dreaded 4 to 6 a.m. watch. In military circles, this is known as the dead man's watch, when the world is at its quietest. Between these hours, the mind plays tricks, turning swaying branches into advancing soldiers or restless spirits. Sitting 100 miles from Saigon, Thomas felt completely isolated from the world he once knew. He gripped his rifle, the cold metal a stark contrast to the stifling heat of the Vietnamese jungle. The silence of the stream was deafening, heightening his senses to every ripple in the dark water. He wondered if explorers like John Colter ever felt this specific brand of primal, mountain-born fear. As the sun remained hidden, the jungle became a theater for the strange and the unexplained. Thomas stared at the suspicious trail, waiting for a sign that they were not alone in these mountains. The air grew colder as the clock ticked toward 5, the peak of the mysterious pre-dawn hours. Little did he know, the history of a lost Roman legion was about to collide with his reality. In this place of ancient shadows, even the stones seemed to whisper forgotten words in archaic Latin. Years later, researchers like Craig Jorgensen would attempt to piece together the anomalies found in these woods. The silence of the 4 a.m. watch was suddenly broken by a sight that defied every law of nature. As the mist rolled off the ridge, a figure appeared that certainly did not belong in Vietnam. Thomas gripped his rifle, his eyes scanning a shape that looked pulled from an ancient history book. This was no North Vietnamese soldier hiding in the brush, but something far older and more haunting. The humidity hung heavy, yet Thomas felt a sudden, bone-chilling cold settle deep within his weary chest. He remembered the stories of Operation Wandering Soul, but this figure seemed far more tangible than a recording. Standing before him was a warrior dressed in the unmistakable armor of an ancient Roman legion. How do you process something your mind insists is impossible while standing alone in a dark jungle? The soldier's gear gleamed with a metallic sheen that seemed to glow against the dark, jagged ridge. It was a sight that felt like a haunting memento mori, a reminder of death across the ages. Thomas blinked, wondering if the exhaustion of the First Cavalry Division was finally playing tricks on his mind. But, as he stared, the impossibility of the situation became even more terrifyingly clear to the young guard. The ancient warrior was not standing on the ground, but was floating 5 feet above the earth. He hung in the air like a portrait suspended by invisible wire, defying the very pull of gravity. There was no sound of footsteps, no rustle of leaves, just a silent specter watching from the void. Perhaps researchers like Craig Jorgensen would one day look for answers to this bizarre and ancient anomaly. Was it a hallucination born of war, or a literal window into a past long since forgotten? Thomas felt like a modern-day John Colter, witnessing a wilderness mystery that no one would ever believe. He almost expected the figure to speak in Latin, calling out from a century far beyond his own. The figure remained motionless, a stoic sentinel from the past anchored to the edge of a Vietnamese ridge. Every instinct screamed at him to run, yet his boots felt heavy and frozen to the damp soil. He watched the specter intently, waiting for a movement that would prove this was just a tired dream. Yet the Roman soldier remained perfectly still, a silent witness to a war he should never have seen. The ridge became a stage for a meeting between two soldiers separated by 2,000 years of history. Thomas froze, his eyes scanning a figure that looked like it was pulled directly from an ancient history book. To dismiss Thomas's story as a mere hallucination, you must ignore a growing body of evidence. We often believe the Roman Empire stopped at the edges of the known and familiar world. Historically, we know the massive Roman Empire officially stretched from the hills of England to Iran. Yet, this ancient power was like a massive web, with strands reaching further than we realized. Could a Roman legion have actually marched through these dense Vietnamese jungles centuries before the war? Intriguing archaeological evidence and ancient texts published in 2021 suggest Romans potentially reached Vietnam's shores. These discoveries challenge everything we thought we knew about the true reach of the Roman legion. We now understand that Greeks successfully navigated a sea route to China during the 1st century BC. If the Greeks found a path, the Roman thirst for discovery surely drove them equally far. Within the context of Operation Wandering Soul, the idea of an ancient ghost becomes terrifyingly plausible. Thomas, serving with the First Cavalry Division, may have witnessed a little piece of forgotten history. The empire was a complex network, constantly pushing into the dark corners of the distant east. Did we vastly underestimate the Roman thirst for discovery and their ability to navigate the globe? Recent scholarly publications continue to reveal clues that link the Mediterranean world to Southeast Asia. Every new artifact found in the dirt whispers of a past far more connected than imagined. Even as soldiers practiced Memento Mori, they walked upon ground that might hold ancient Roman secrets. Researchers like Craig Jorgensen have explored these anomalies, bridging the gap between myth and military reality. Perhaps the words whispered in the jungle weren't just echoes, but the long-lost sounds of Latin. Like the legendary explorer John Coulter, Thomas stumbled into a landscape that defied his modern understanding. Could a Roman legionnaire have actually died in Vietnam, leaving his spirit to wander the jungle? The dense canopy hides many things, and history has a strange way of repeating its patterns. Evidence suggests that the Roman reach was not limited by the maps found in our textbooks. To the men on patrol, the jungle felt ancient, but they never expected it to be Roman. These archaeological finds turn a soldier's wild ghost story into a compelling historical investigation. If the Romans truly reached these shores, the gear Thomas saw was a genuine historical artifact. To believe the sighting, we must look beyond the First Cavalry Division's modern maps and equipment. Our story begins with the immense power of the ancient Roman legion across distant, unfamiliar lands. At its peak, the massive Roman Empire stretched across the globe from England to modern Iran. This vast territory created a bridge between the cold Atlantic and the burning deserts of Asia. Yet, the legions were always searching for more, driven by unyielding desire for imperial expansion. While the soldiers marched, Greek explorers were quietly charting the treacherous and unknown waters of the East. In the 1st century BC, these Greeks discovered a legendary sea route leading directly toward China. This breakthrough transformed the Mediterranean into a gateway for the mysterious riches of the ancient Orient. Such a journey required navigating past the dense, emerald jungles of the misty Vietnamese coastline. Merchant ships and their military escorts often found themselves at the mercy of these jagged shores. Could a Roman legion detachment have been swept into this humid, unforgiving landscape so long ago? The Latin whispers heard in the brush might be echoes from these ancient, forgotten maritime voyages. Perhaps the soldier Thomas witnessed was a remnant of a mission that never returned to Rome. For these men, the concept of Memento Mori was not just philosophy, but a daily reality. They sailed through the South China Sea, unaware their ghosts would haunt a future American war. This ancient path placed the Roman world in direct contact with the distant edges of Vietnam. Researchers like Craig Jorgensen have pondered how deep these historical roots truly go into the soil. Even John Coulter might have recognized the silent, stoic discipline of a man from the past. Operation Wandering Soul reminds us that the restless dead rarely stay buried in such a place. The jungle preserves the past, waiting for the right moment to reveal its hidden, ghostly occupants. If a Roman ship foundered here, the shoreline became a permanent, lonely outpost for its crew. History suggests that the Mediterranean and the Mekong were connected much earlier than we once thought. This sea route explains how a lost centurion could appear amidst a modern, violent jungle conflict. The evidence of Greek navigation makes the impossible sighting feel like a tangible, historical reality. We are left wondering what other ghosts are still patrolling these ancient, coastal trade routes today. The detail was too specific for a tired mind to invent in the deep jungle. Thomas didn't just see a ghost, he saw a soldier equipped for an ancient war. This phantom stood frozen, draped in a heavy cape that defied the humid air. On his head, the figure wore a helmet meticulously crafted from dark, withered leather. The gear felt as real as the M16 clutched in Thomas's own trembling hands. Why would a simple hallucination include the specific battering on an oblong shield? The shield was distinct, an oblong shape showing the scars of many forgotten battles. It was a relic of a Roman legion, misplaced in time and thousands of miles away. Resting at the figure's side was a short sword tucked into a rugged sheath. The sheath itself was a curious mix of aged metal and worn, thick leather. Could a modern infantryman naturally envision the complex design of such ancient leather armor? Below the heavy cape, the spirit's feet were bound in simple, traditional sandals. This was no victim of Operation Wandering Soul, but a relic of a far older era. The equipment appeared to belong to a soldier who once spoke the ancient tongue of Latin. Every piece of equipment whispered of a world long dead, yet tangibly present here. The battered shield and archaic blade suggested a warrior who knew only constant conflict. The archaic textures stood out in sharp contrast against the vibrant, green jungle canopy. No detail seemed out of place, from the leather straps to the shield's worn edge. Even in the dim light, the craftsmanship of the ancient soldier's armor was unmistakably clear. It was as if a page from a history book had manifested in the mud. Thomas watched, paralyzed, as the moon caught the metallic glint of the sheathed sword. The sight felt like a memento mori, a grim reminder of mortality across the ages. This soldier of the First Cavalry Division was witnessing a ghost from a different empire. But Thomas isn't the only one to bring back a story that sounds like myth. Throughout history, men have returned from the edge of the map with stories that everyone called impossible. Thomas is simply part of a long lineage of witnesses who saw things the world wasn't ready for. Think of John Coulter, the American soldier who trekked with the legendary Lewis and Clark expedition. In the early 1800s, Coulter returned from the wilderness describing a place of fire and boiling water. People mocked his stories of Coulter's hell, convinced the soldier had finally lost his mind. Decades later, the world discovered Yellowstone, proving that John Coulter had been telling the truth all along. If Coulter was right about his hell, could Thomas be right about a Roman legion in Vietnam? Like a flare shot into the dark, these stories highlight things our modern maps choose to ignore. Perhaps these legends are just history that we haven't found the physical evidence for quite yet. Consider the Welsh legends regarding the founding of London, a city steeped in deep, ancient mystery. These old stories claim a man named Brutus founded the great city we know today. Long before it was London, the legend says the city was named Caer Troia, or New Troy. To modern ears, a Trojan origin for a British capital sounds like a complete and total myth. Yet, historical anomalies like Thomas's sighting suggest the Roman reach was far wider than we imagine. The Latin words and the Memento Mori theme reflect a past that refuses to stay buried. As a member of the First Cavalry Division, Thomas was trained to observe his surroundings with precision. His account mirrors the psychological weight of Operation Wandering Soul, where ghosts were used as tactical weapons. Craig Jorgensen's research into these anomalies suggests that some sightings cannot be explained by military psyops. Thomas saw a Roman soldier, a figure out of time, standing in a jungle thousands of miles away. These stories serve as a memento mori, reminding us that empires and soldiers eventually fade into dust. Is it possible that Thomas stumbled upon a fragment of history that had been forgotten by everyone else? We often dismiss what we don't understand, labeling any deviation from the record as a mere hallucination. But the legacy of John Calder teaches us that the impossible is often just the undiscovered truth. Thomas's story remains a haunting riddle, an echo of a Roman past in a modern war zone. But sometimes, the mind truly does play tricks, as another veteran would eventually testify. We must also consider the rational explanation, a phenomenon often called the sapper in the mist. Veteran Craig Jorgensen knows the power of a hallucination firsthand, an experience that almost cost him his life. Jorgensen served 7 years in the U.S. Army, operating as a skilled reconnaissance infantryman in dangerous territory. His time in the service taught him that the mind can become an enemy when pushed too far. In the sweltering heat of the jungle, the line between reality and nightmare often begins to blur. For soldiers like Jorgensen, every shadow in the undergrowth could hide a lethal threat waiting to strike. This atmosphere was the perfect breeding ground for the psychological terror of Operation Wandering Soul. One night, while staring into the dense fog, Jorgensen witnessed something that defied his tactical training. Through the shifting gray haze, a figure emerged, moving with the silent precision of an enemy combatant. Jorgensen felt the cold grip of adrenaline as he raised his weapon, ready to end the threat. His finger tightened on the trigger, the weight of a life-or-death decision hanging in the humid air. But, as the mist swirled, the terrifying figure vanished into nothingness, leaving only the empty jungle behind. There was no enemy, no sapper, and no footsteps, only the frantic beating of a terrified heart. A hallucination is like a mirror, reflecting your own inner fear back at you with startling clarity. This internal memento mori serves as a grim reminder of how fragile our perception truly is. Does the jungle create these monsters, or does it simply reveal the shadows already hiding within us? Jorgensen realized that extreme stress and lack of sleep had conjured a phantom from his own mind. This personal brush with the impossible stayed with him long after he left the battlefield behind. He eventually chronicled these intense memories in his compelling 2001 book, titled Very Crazy G.I. Through his writing, Jorgensen provides a grounded perspective on the tricks a desperate brain can play. His story acts as a vital counterpoint to the more mysterious legends of the Roman legion. Where the First Cavalry Division saw phantoms, Jorgensen recognized the creation of his own survival instincts. It raises a haunting question: where is the line between a stressed brain and a spiritual encounter? While Jorgensen found a rational answer, Thomas would soon encounter mysterious voices speaking ancient Latin. But Jorgensen's vision was a mistake of the mind. What Thomas heard next was something else entirely. What Thomas encountered in the brush was far different from the standard hallucinations of modern war. Many soldiers in the First Cavalry Division reported seeing phantoms during the heat of battle. Veteran Craig Jorgensen, a reconnaissance infantryman with 7 years of service, witnessed many such tricks. Jorgensen often described the sapper in the mist, a common phantom born from extreme combat stress. These sightings usually involve blurry figures or half-seen movements that vanish into the humid jungle air. But the figure Thomas faced did not flicker or fade like a typical ghost of exhaustion. Unlike the vague shapes reported by others, this man was grounded in chillingly specific historical detail. Thomas clearly saw a helmet made of leather, a piece of gear long lost to history. The leather was worn and aged, reflecting a reality that defied the modern chaos of 1968. This was not a modern soldier or a wandering soul from Operation Wandering Soul. Most combat visions are silent or filled with the screams of fallen comrades from the past. Yet, this mysterious figure opened his mouth and spoke a language that Thomas barely recognized. He did not speak Vietnamese or English, but rather the ancient and rhythmic sounds of Latin. Hearing Latin in the middle of a Southeast Asian jungle shattered every logical explanation for hallucination. How could a mind under pressure invent the complex grammar of a dead Mediterranean language? For men like Craig Jorgensen, the jungle played tricks, but those tricks usually stayed within reason. A leather-clad warrior speaking Latin suggests something far more physical than a simple mental fracture. It serves as a haunting memento mori, a reminder of death that transcends the boundaries of time. The Roman legion seemed to have reached across the centuries to find Thomas in the dark. Unlike the legend of John Colder, Thomas wasn't running from the present, but into the past. Every specific detail points away from a tired mind and toward an impossible physical encounter. We must ask why a Roman soldier would be standing guard in a modern war zone. If this was a hallucination, it was one of the most intellectually complex in military history. The contrast between Jorgensen's mist and Thomas's Roman soldier creates a riddle with no easy answer. This encounter forces us to reconsider everything we know about the thin veil of the jungle. While Jorgensen saw a phantom enemy, Thomas heard a haunting voice echoing from beyond the grave. Before the figure vanished, it spoke two words in a language Thomas didn't know: Memento Mori. The sounds were ancient and rhythmic, clashing strangely with the humidity of the dense jungle. Thomas stood frozen as the translucent soldier leaned forward, his lips moving in a silent command. These words felt heavier than the damp air, vibrating with a weight that defied the modern war. At the time, the young student from Washington could only stare in a state of profound confusion. He had no way of knowing that he was listening to the dead Latin of a fallen empire. The encounter would haunt his dreams for decades, a secret kept locked away in his mind. It would take years of searching before Thomas finally identified the specific meaning of those two words. The message the Roman legion left behind was a chilling greeting from a completely different era. This phrase served as a grim reminder that even the strongest empires eventually crumble into the dust. In Latin, Memento Mori carries a simple, terrifying weight. Remember, you must die. For a soldier in the First Cavalry Division, no message could possibly feel more haunting or direct. Is there a more chilling warning for a young man fighting for survival in a hostile land? The phrase was like a time capsule, waiting years for Thomas to finally find the right key. While the military used Operation Wandering Soul to scare enemies, Thomas faced a different kind of ghost. This phantom didn't want to play psychological games. It wanted to deliver a timeless, universal truth. Thomas finally understood that the Roman reach extended far beyond the modern history books he once studied. The apparition's words were not a threat, but a profound acknowledgement of their shared human mortality. Even now, the memory of that Latin whisper remains the most vivid part of his wartime experience. Like the legendary John Colder, Thomas had witnessed something that defied any rational, modern explanation. This wasn't just a sighting, it was a warning that has echoed through the long, dark centuries. We often dismiss the impossible as war stories, but for those there, these experiences are their only truth. The war in Vietnam ended decades ago, but for Thomas and his comrades, the ghosts still remain today. Why do we find it easier to believe in war's horror than its deepest, most haunting mysteries? These tales are the scar tissue of the human soul, etched by moments that defy any rational explanation. In the dense jungle heat, the First Cavalry Division faced more than just a visible, human enemy. We must ask if these stories survive because they are true, or because we simply need them. The respect we owe these veterans starts with acknowledging the impossible things they claim to have witnessed. Craig Jorgensen captured this surreal atmosphere in his accounts of the conflict's most bizarre and unsettling moments. His book, titled Very Crazy G, was published in 2001 to document these unbelievable battlefield encounters. Within those pages, Jorgensen explores the thin line between a soldier's reality and their worst nightmares. Thomas's encounter with a Roman legionnaire sounds like a dream, yet it carries the heavy weight of history. Like the explorer John Colder, Thomas returned from the wilderness with a story no one wanted to believe. Perhaps these sightings are a form of memento mori, reminding us that death and history never truly sleep. Even Operation Wandering Soul played upon the ancient fear that the dead do not always rest quietly. When a soldier hears Latin whispered in a place it shouldn't exist, the world feels much older. To dismiss a veteran-esque experience, a mere hallucination, is to ignore the profound impact of their trauma. These men weren't looking for ghosts. They were simply trying to survive a war that felt like hell. The specificity of their descriptions suggests something far more complex than a tired mind playing clever tricks. Whether it was a ghost or a psychological shadow, the terror they felt was undeniably and hauntingly real. We live in a world that demands evidence, yet some truths can only be felt in the heart. As the years pass, the voices from the jungle grow quieter, but the questions they raised remain unanswered. Jorgensen's 2001 publication serves as a bridge between our modern world and the mysteries of the past. It reminds us that every soldier carries a burden of secrets that the rest of us cannot see. To listen to Thomas is to honor the vulnerability required to share a story that invites such ridicule. The Roman phantom and the Latin warning may be impossible, yet they have become part of our history. In the end, perhaps the most important thing we can do for these men is simply to listen. Their stories deserve to be heard, echoing long after the jungle silence has reclaimed a heavy land. If you want to delve deeper into these unexplainable accounts, Craig Jorgensen's work is the place to start. His book, Very Crazy G, captures the haunting reality of soldiers who face the impossible in Vietnam. Within its pages, the lines between modern warfare and ancient mystery blur into a single, chilling truth. From the First Cavalry Division to the furthest reaches of the bush, these experiences remain etched in memory. We must remember the Latin whispers and the Roman legion that shouldn't have been there at all. Like the legendary tales of John Calder, these modern accounts challenge our understanding of the natural world. Every veteran account is a vital piece of a puzzle that spans across centuries of human history. Sharing these stories is like keeping a candle lit for the men who experienced the unexplainable. The Memento Mori of the jungle reminds us that some shadows never truly fade from our world. What other stories are waiting in the mist, hidden away by time and the thick tropical air? Will you be the one to hear them and carry their weight into the light of day? Perhaps the next phantom encountered in the brush will be the one that finally explains it all. Until then, we listen to the voices of men like Thomas and others who saw the impossible. Operation Wandering Soul may have been a tactic, but for some, the wandering souls were all too real. Craig Jorgensen reminds us that the battlefield is a place where the past and present often collide. We invite you to explore these veteran accounts and discover the secrets buried within the dense green canopy. Every whispered word in Latin and every glimpse of ancient armor tells a story worth knowing. The legacy of the First Cavalry Division is more than just combat. It is a brush with the eternal. As we close this chapter, let the mystery of the Roman soldier linger in your wandering thoughts. Stay curious, keep searching the shadows, and never stop listening to the echoes of the forgotten past.